Hey guys, welcome to the YouTube channel again. I'm out here at the shop working on my car. I'm prepping it up for my race in Hallett in the next coming weeks. And I thought this would be a good time to talk about, I guess, my AE86 overview. So here goes nothing. This right here is my race car here. It's a Toyota Corolla AE86. Technically, it's an SR5 Corolla. It's been converted to GTS. I got it that way. It was a full interior, and I pretty much, removed everything I needed to do to make it into a race car. So I'll just go for the back and then talk about the exterior stuff. But most recently, my last race, unfortunately, I had a fire. What happened was I had the USDM bumper here, and it doesn't work on the JDM Buddy Club muffler, and the muffler got too hot that it burnt the rear bumper. Thankfully, I caught in time with my fellow racers kind of signaling me that something's up with my car, and extinguished it fairly quickly. So it's always good to have a fire extinguisher, but I do have a JDM bumper that's coming in, hopefully before the next race. And over here is just mostly a stock AE86 coupe. It's a 1984 Toyota Corolla coupe. So the very first early versions of the AE86 here, Toyota Corollas. As far as bodywork, this is all stock except for the front. It's a VIS front bumper. It's all fiberglass. I got this bumper actually free from my VIS friends in California. They heard about what happened to my bumper, which unfortunately got smashed on transportation, but I was there for a race and they hooked it up, so I'm very thankful for that. It looks pretty good. Just needs to, still has some battle scars, as you can see, from wheel-to-wheel racing, but it holds up pretty well. I just did some repairs on it. Unfortunately, I kind of knocked this off from my last race too. I think I went off and hit the curb and unfortunately messed up my bumper and took out this whole part right here, but kind of zip tied it and fiberglassed it, and it does fine. We'll see, but it does the job really. So yeah, so that's pretty much it for the exterior. The exterior also, I have this aftermarket eBay mirrors. Honestly, it's just for style. Nothing, doesn't really serve a purpose really. I actually have mirrors inside the car where I can actually see the cars behind me. And it's kind of dusty, unfortunately. The warehouse does get pretty dusty. And then on the interior, it's mostly just stripped down interior. Everything that doesn't really serve a purpose for racing, I pulled it out. I even stripped out the wires and only just have like the basic wires to start and turn on the lights and brake lights, whatnot in the car, and that's pretty much it. When I took out the weight, it wasn't a whole lot, honestly, or at least it felt like, because the stock interior on these old cars are very thin pieces of plastic and thin pieces of carpet, so it doesn't have that much insulation and stuff. And I did remove the sound deadening insulation. How I did that was with dry ice and alcohol. Apparently you do that mixture and it freezes the insulation and you're able to like just crack it out. So yeah, that's the interior all stripped out. For safety, you do need a 6-point roll cage. This is an auto power 6-point bolt-in roll cage. And yeah, I get some people, saying, hey, this isn't a real cage, blah, blah, blah. But honestly, it's a NASA certified, SCCA certified for wheel-to-wheel racing. And you can see it there too, like they do inspect the cage yearly. So, and honestly, those people that kind of bash about it, I don't think they even have racing experience, to tell you the truth. But ideally, I would want to get a more legit cage. Unfortunately, it's just a lot of money to get a really nice cage. Is around $6 grand and up. And I paid $1,000 for this cage in 2019 or 2018 technically, and installed it 2019. And it's been good. It just sits kind of low, as you can see there. The cage does sit low, and in order to make it wheel-to-wheel certified too, is you need these door bars. So you can see the door bars on that side. They're not going to open up this side here too, so you can get a better view. But the door bars do come with the auto power kit. You do have to weld them in, and I had a fabricator weld my door bars in, and then they added these extra bars, these vertical bars, for extra support, and it's on both sides there, and you do need that for wheel-to-wheel racing. Clearance on it is pretty good, as you can see. So yeah, it's not too bad, but the price and safety, you know, it does the job. So as long as it's certified for wheel-to-wheel racing, your cage should be good. And over here on the exterior, or on the interior, sorry, I have my portable fire extinguisher, which I like to keep it handy just in case there's a fire externally, like my bumper, which thankfully this fire extinguisher did save my car, really, just in case. I did refill it, or bought a new one and tossed the old one away, so always make sure it's fully charged up there. I also relocated the battery. The factory battery's in the bumper, or in the engine bay, and I relocated it back here. It's covered, just did Amazon special RV battery box. I covered it up because it's like a regular battery. It's not a dry cell or a lightweight racing battery. So if that's the case, and it's like a regular car battery, you have to enclose the battery if it's inside the car. So that's what I had to do, and it's bolted onto the frame, which is very secure and sturdy there. And then I have my attachments for my GoPro for the cage, so that's where I put my GoPro on, and it's bolted onto the cage there. And then here is my external my external fire extinguisher too, where if something happened to me and I'm not able to pull my fire extinguisher out, someone like corner workers or someone can pull this out on the side real easy. So just in case. And this is for the fire extinguisher that sprays in the cockpit and engine bay, which is now required for next year. You need to have a actual fire suppression system to go racing next year, and it's pretty much by cable, as you can see here, and then cable right there. So when you pull on it, this fire bottle will spray in the cockpit and engine bay if there's ever a fire. Hopefully it won't happen, but just in case, you do need that for next year. So 2023, you do need a fire suppression system. And I place it inside the car just because it's just a lot easier and simpler for me to plumb everything. And then here I have my Accu Sump. This is part of the system, but I'll talk more about that in the engine bay. But the Accu Sump basically just pumps extra oil into the engine bay to avoid fuel starvation, or oil starvation. And then here I kind of covered up my wiring here. I did leave this one exposed just to show it's my positive battery cable. But the rest of the wiring, I pretty much kind of made it real nice and tidy, covered it all up, made it nice and clean. And this right here is my 4-pin relay system. I pretty much have relays for the fuel pump, fan, and that's pretty much it there. It says light on there, but my lights aren't hooked up, unfortunately. Since I mostly race in the daytime, I don't have working headlights, so there was no point for me to hook up the lights. And then I have the battery, and then the 12 volt there for the sources there, all fused and everything. So I've been racing for like 2 years and no fires, thankfully. And I had this car for 4 years, just tracking it total, and no fire from electrical wise, at least no fire from that, so that's good there. And then this right here is my Trd Short Shifter. It's actually for the right-hand drive vehicles, but I don't have any issues being kind of off-centered for the right-hand drive. I don't have any issues like shifting or anything like that. It's been pretty good, solid shifts. And then let's see here on this side. Oh, and then I have my Link Monsoon G4 Ecu, which controls the engine management of the motor and everything else, plus the fuses and the relays for that. It was all custom made by R&R Auto Sports. And then over here I have a bucket seat, Race Tech bucket seat. It has a halo, which is pretty good to have, especially when you're racing with the helmet. Kind of keeps your head intact in place, doesn't make it move around a lot. For street driving though, I wouldn't recommend a halo because you can't really see off your peripheral vision at all with the halo. So street driving, I would not recommend a halo. Halos are used to just kind of keep your helmet in place, so if you hopefully not get hit or whatever, your head's not bouncing around. And then on the back here, I have a back brace because these seats do expire. And one way to pass inspection is either buy a brand new seat where the expiration expires in 10 years or 5 years, or you can just put a back brace on an expired seat. And as long as the seat looks like it's physically intact, no cracks or anything like that, the back brace should work and you'll pass tech. And it's like a cheap, maybe like $30, $40 to do on this. So rather than paying like $2,000 or $1,000 for a new seat, you can also do that as long as your expired seat look physically good. And then over here, I have my personal wheel. Bought that used on eBay for like 50 bucks. Then onto a bus hub, and then also an energy quick release right there. And up here on that gauge right there is my AEM air fuel ratio, and over there is my AIM dash, which is an MXN. And basically this dash hooks up to my ECU and it relays all the vital information that I need. And if I need to, I can connect wirelessly on my laptop to check my data, also change the instruments, the displays and all that if I want to on the computer. Or I can also hook it up over here. This is a little USB adapter. I just unscrew the cover and I put my USB in there, and I can connect there via USB to see the data on my car and change the vitals and whatnot I need to do from the car. But so far it's been pretty good. And then let's see, I have my big old Broadway mirror, which I actually use a lot when I go racing. That's the one that makes me see from my side, my right or passenger side. Make sure there's no cars coming up against me or anything like that, or I hit somebody, just stuff like that. So yeah, so that's on that side there. I'll walk around to the other side so I can show you the other stuff that I got here too here. So this is the seat there too again, and it's on let me see here. It's on RaceQuip 6-point harnesses, and they do have expiration dates. So this is going to expire in December 2022, which is this coming year. And I can get these recertified, which you just send out these old belts, and the company RaceQuip, whatever brand you bought these from, will recertify them for you. Or you can just get new 6-point harnesses. Recertifying it is cheaper, but does take some time because, they have to ship out your belts and then they have to recertify, which can take, months, especially in today's time with COVID and the supply shortages and all that good stuff. But those are some options you can do. Also, as you can see here, I have my fire suppression here on the driver's side. So if anything happens, I can pull it off on here on my side too. And then I do have a kill switch, which is required for racing also. It has to automatically kill the car when you use this kill switch. And it's pretty good to have, in fires or anything issues, you can just flip that off and kill the car immediately. So that's that there. And then here is my other mirror that I use to see behind me when I go wheel-to-wheel racing. It's like a convex mirror, which so you can see pretty nicely on here. And then here I also have my window net. Again, this is a RaceQuip window net, and it's going to expire this year. So I can get this recertified or just buy a new window net. This is also required for wheel-to-wheel racing too, is a window net. And I have my fabricator weld me up the hooks for it on the back there too. There you go. So yeah, that's pretty much it on the interior side. Oh, and then you can see this blue nozzle, that's part of the spray. Then I have another spray going from here where it sprays pretty much the cockpit, my feet, torso area, just in case if anything happens. And then we'll close this here. We'll talk about my suspension and brakes here and tires. So I have two sets of tires. I have my Volks, which I use, or my Toscos. The Volks are 14 by 7 offset 0, and it's on Advan A050 tires, which are very grippy track tires, like probably the grippiest that I've tracked on the AE86. I'm actually the fastest on these tires. And then over here I have my Toscos. They're technically replicas, they're called in projects. It's 14/8 negative, I think 18 offset, so this is way more aggressive, sticks out a lot more, and it's on Nankang AR1s. These Nankangs, they're okay. I'm actually 2 seconds slower on the Nankangs versus the Advan A050s, but the Nankangs seem to last grip-wise a lot longer on long endurance stuff. Like when I have the 1 hour long races, these tend to hold their grip to the very end. These, unfortunately, on the Advans, they tend to like fall off or start losing grip maybe 4 or 5 laps before the end of the race, and I notice it because I'll be sliding a lot more with these tires at the end. These aren't too bad for, I guess, endurance stuff type of deal. And I did one race weekend on it, and they still have I have lots of thread left, as you can see. So they do last. It seems to be lasting a lot longer than my Advans, where they already have 3 events on them, and you can kind of tell it's almost it's probably 50% life on the threads, or at least that's what it looks like. So we'll see how long these Nankangs ultimately last. And then for the brake system and suspension, it's just mainly stock brakes. I have stock calipers, and it's on Stop Tech rotors. On the rears, it's solid OEM rotors, or Rock Auto rotors actually, super cheap. And then the pads, they're Porterfield race pads, front and rear. They've been pretty good for me. I use it to modulate and control the braking on them. Seems to last for a whole year before you have to replace them. So they last for a good time, probably because the car is also pretty light. It's about 2,050 pounds without driver in it. So yeah, they lighter the car, the longer the parts last technically. And then the suspension is Annex suspension on Swift springs. It's 8 kilograms in the front, 6 in the rear. Pretty good setup for racing. I would not recommend this for daily though, or street driving. It's just too stiff. And I'm 5 or 6 clicks off from full soft too. And this is like 15 clicks you can do for the stiffness of the dampening. So yeah, it's fairly on the soft side for dampening, and for me, I like those settings. And I'm on Goodrich stainless steel brake lines, which are pretty good too for pedal feel and braking there. And I'm on ARP extended studs, and I do have the spacer for my Volks. For the Toscos, I take out the spacer just because it's a lot more aggressive than the Volt TE37s there. And then we'll go to the motor now, which is probably the biggest thing that keeps this car running, is the motor. And I'll show you that here too shortly. Here we go. So let's go put this guy up here. Okay, so this right here is the 16 valve 4AGE motor. It's a big port. This is like the first or earlier generation big ports, but it does have the 7 rib block. So I would say maybe mid-generation. The early generation big ports had the 3 rib block. So they're a little bit weaker, different size internals, but pretty much the same design internally, like the same concept. Yes, but yeah, anyways, this is a 7 rib big port. So a little bit newer version of the 4AG, but not the newest, but a little bit more updated. It has this Trd replica 4-in-1 header, which I header wrapped, and it's also a must if you are going to go racing a lot, because the exhaust does create a lot of heat, and you want to at least contain it, because if everything gets hot, it becomes very uncomfortable and it's not fun. Plus, you're near the master cylinder, and that could definitely or brake booster, that can get hot just from the radiating heat from this. So it's always good to wrap it up. And speaking of the brake booster, this is a Nissan brake booster. I don't know where it came from specifically, but it does say Nissan on here. and came with the car when I got it. I don't have any issues braking with it though. It's been pretty good. And then I put this Narita Dogfight reservoir cover or towel, you can say, just to soak up any brake fluid that could have leaked out from the hard cornering and all that good stuff, because brake fluid is flammable. And then you can also see here my suppression system, where I have one nozzle there, another nozzle there, another nozzle there, another one down there. So I have 4 nozzles spraying the bay, just in case if anything happens, I can quickly extinguish it. And then the setup for ignition is a coil and plug setup, custom made by R&R Auto Sports. The engine harness is all done by R&R Auto Sports. It's on 1NZ coils, and it's on the SQ Engineering 1NZ coil adapter plate here. And then I also have a JDM4A GZE Dizzy, which serves as my cam angle sensor. So this is the one that senses the engine's rotation to deliver that spark to the cylinder which it needs. And there's different types of coil and plug setups, but this is probably the most, for me at least, was the most easiest and simplest way to do it. I did this 3 years ago or 4 years ago now, and at the time there wasn't many coil and plug setups, so you kind of had to custom make it. Nowadays there's a whole bunch of kits for these coil and plug setups, and what I've seen the most are people kind of do the coil and plug by the crank. So it's a lot, I guess it's a little bit different, but it means it's done by the crank instead of by up here by the camshaft, but same concept really. And then on this side here I have my oil cooler kit. Again, it's also custom, where I have the MRP sandwich plate there, which I have 2 hoses coming out and into the block. So one hose goes out of the block, one goes into the block. And it's basically routed to where oil comes out of the block, goes into the filter, and the filter goes into the oil cooler, which is right here. And then the cooled oil goes back into the block. So I always filtered the oil before it goes into the oil cooler, just to avoid any contaminants getting stuck in the oil cooler. And what I also did is I placed this mesh screen on here just in case from debris or rocks on the track, it won't puncture the radiator. I had a friend recently lose his motor because a piece of rock punctured the radiator and overheated his car, unfortunately. So this is kind of good, cheap insurance to have. And then speaking of the Accu Sump that was inside the car, the Accu Sump, that gold little hose there is part of the Accu Sump system. So whenever the engine PSI drops, I'll dump an extra quarter or 2 into the block to kind of keep the PSI high. And it's been a good setup. My PSI reading's been reading at 60 PSI, 70 PSI at red line all the time, never really dropped below that. So that's a good thing to have. And then this right here, also for cooling, is eBay aluminum radiator. Works just fine. eBay 12-inch fans also works just fine. And here I have an oil catch can system here too. This is also eBay oil catch can, and just kind of cut the hoses to fit. I did a heater hose just because it can take the heat better, in my opinion. No issues for me. And I had these custom bungs welded onto the factory valve cover just to connect it. And pretty simple setup. And then I also have the MRP timing belt tensioner here, right here also. That's to keep everything nice and tight and tensioned, so at least the belt won't skip a tooth or something if, you know, on the high revs on decel or acceleration. And it's been good. And it's that little small guy there. I did have to cut the engine cover a bit to make it fit, but it does the job. And as you notice, I have also marked my bolts now, because when in racing, bolts do come loose and vibrates a lot, and it's always good to mark them to make sure none of the bolts are coming loose. And if it did, I mean, you can easily find it and Loctite it or Nord washer it and call it a day. And then here, it's ITBs. It's on a T3 big port adapter plate. So you have an adapter plate to the head, which allows you to run 20 valve silver top throttle bodies here. and that's from the factory from Toyota, where the newer 4AGs, the black tops basically, or the silver tops, the newer ones were ITB, and you can basically use those individual throttle bodies on that adapter plate, and then it goes on to these trumpets, which are, I think, 90mm trumpets. Not so sure the brand of it. I got it from my friend Tyson, and I was building this car, and I did have to do some mods to it though. I had to weld this plate to the trumpet basically, because unfortunately in racing these got loose, and you can easily wiggle these guys. So thankfully I had some welder friends that know how to weld aluminum, and they did a very good clean job, which I'm thankful for the car community for, and they've been pretty stable. And then again, the wiring harness is all done by R&R Auto Sports there. Really good guy there from Malaysia. Pretty much told him what I wanted, and he built it for me, suggested some other things, and it worked out great. Took about a month to do, but that was again like 2018. With COVID times, it might take a lot longer though. And then the hoses are eBay HPS hoses. I did remove the heater core, and basically there used to be like a piece of hose that come out from the back of the block to the heater core, but I removed all of that and pretty much took that piece of, I guess, outlet in the back and routed it back to the water pump back here. So everything's kind of like in a closed loop type of deal. So that's pretty much it with the car. It doesn't make a whole lot of power, honestly. I haven't dynoed this one, but my last motor dynoed at 110. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is 110 or maybe 103 maybe, or 113. I know for sure I'm not able to keep up with these two spec Miatas, drag racing them down the straight. I do try to get their drafts, but unfortunately I just start pulling away from, or I start lagging behind in the drafts too. So I'm lacking straight line speed on this, but it's a good learner car. I'm not maxed out in my class, but I've placed podium first, second, and third on this car, so I'm pretty happy with it. It's a good learning car, like I said, and hopefully I'll continue to race with this car. But that's pretty much it with my build setup with this AE86. It's been pretty good. I just do the maintenance on it, and yeah, other than that, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching, and hope you guys enjoy your day. All right, see ya.